In the evening, I aired out the apartment for a long time. Not because I needed to, I just wanted fresh air, that cold night scent that comes after rain. The air from the street was thicker than usual, with a slight dampness, as if something still lingered in it. I stood by the window and watched the fog dance under the streetlight, barely visible, dissolved in the golden light. It didn't dissipate, but seemed to gather, pulling itself together in one place, slowly and patiently. I closed the window, turned on the lamp, and went to the bedroom. Under the covers, it was warm, familiar, safe. I lay down, hugged the pillow, and let my eyes close on their own. Sleep came in waves, leaving short gaps of clarity between them. Before finally going under, I heard a quiet sound, shh, as if someone was very slowly dragging a palm across the carpet. I opened my eyes for a second. A light haze hung in the middle of the room. Thin, transparent, nothing threatening. I closed my eyes again and let my body let go. Paralysis didn't cover me. It took me apart. First, the sensation in my feet disappeared. Then, the calves, knees, thighs. My body grew heavy gradually, as if I were slowly being submerged in a thick, warm substance. I still thought I was just lying motionless when suddenly I realized I no longer decide whether I am lying down or not. I try to move my fingers. Nothing. Not even an impulse arose, as if the command never reached its destination. My eyes opened by themselves. I stared into the darkness and felt my breathing becoming not my own. The inhales were short, careful. The exhales too long, drawn out. Between them, pauses appeared, excessive, dangerous. I tried to change the rhythm. The body didn't react. My chest rose and fell without my participation. I realized I couldn't swallow. My throat was dry. My tongue lay like a dead weight in my mouth. With every second, this feeling became more unbearable, as if I were stuck in my own body like a trap. The room was familiar, and that was exactly why it was terrifying. Everything looked too correct. So correct that I felt, if something changes here, I will notice it too late. The fog in the room became thicker. I felt it not with my eyes, but with my chest. The air grew dense. Breathing became harder. The fog didn't just move. It adapted. It filled the gaps, the pauses, the voids between things, between breaths, between thoughts. I tried to close my eyes. My eyelids twitched and stayed open. Don't close them, a voice whispered. Not an order, an explanation. You want to see how this happens, don't you? I couldn't hear where it came from. It had no direction. The body is almost ready, the voice continued. It lies well. It breathes well. It accepts well. The fog touched the blanket. I felt it not with my skin, but through the loss of heat, as if it was slowly being drawn out from that very spot. Then the fog was already under the blanket. I realized this when my stomach stopped rising on its own. Inhale and exhale began to happen as if around the chest, not inside it. See, something whispered. I'm not taking anything. I'm just helping. The pressure wasn't strong. That was exactly what frightened me. It was even constant, the kind that didn't let the body remember what it was like without it. The fog crawled higher, inch by inch. You think you can still wake up, said the voice. But you no longer remember what it's like to wake up on your own. I tried to focus, to find at least one part of the body that was still mine. I couldn't. It felt like I was becoming a function, not a human. To lie, to breathe, to not move. A darker part of the fog leaned over me. I felt it not as a shape, but as a tension. Tell me, it whispered, do you remember what you look like when you sleep? I didn't know the answer. And just at that moment, when the thought began to disintegrate, I jerked. A sharp, painful breath tore through the paralysis, as if I had been ripped from underwater. I sat up in bed, gasping. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The room was clean, quiet, no fog at all, but along the wall, under the window, a damp streak stretched across the floor, as if someone had lain nearby for a long time and hadn't fully left. Nothing special happened that evening. I returned home as usual, took off my shoes, placed my bag against the wall, and mechanically checked my phone. The day was ordinary, devoid of events worth remembering. The apartment was quiet, that same silence that doesn't alarm you because you've grown used to it. I made myself some tea. While the water was boiling, I wandered through the rooms, thinking of nothing in particular. And then, almost by accident, I noticed the scent. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't new. On the contrary, it was strangely familiar, like an old wooden wardrobe that hadn't been opened in ages, like warm skin after sleep, like a sweetness, but not an edible one, the kind you sense not with your mouth but with your memory. I stopped. I listened to my own senses. The scent had no source. It wasn't in the air. It didn't trail from furniture or clothes. It was simply there, a breath's distance away. I opened the window. I aired out the room. I washed my hands. The scent did not vanish. I even smiled, chalking it all up to fatigue. Perhaps a new detergent. Perhaps something from a street. Before bed, I purposefully smelled my clothes. Nothing suspicious. I lay down in bed, closed my eyes, and only then did I realize the scent had become pleasant. Not just pleasant, soothing, as if someone had very gently convinced me that everything was fine. With that thought, I fell asleep. I didn't wake up. I was stuck. At first, it wasn't even frightening. It was warm, not from the blanket, but from within, as if the room had become smaller and cozier. The air seemed denser, heavier, yet soft. I tried to move, not with my body, but with my intent, and I felt the movement stop before reaching my muscles, as if the command had gotten lost along the way. I didn't realize it immediately. First, I thought now. Then why not now? My eyes opened on their own. I was breathing, but the breathing was too correct, too even. Inhale, pause, exhale, without a hitch, without panic, as if someone were watching to make sure I didn't ruin the rhythm. The scent returned instantly. Now it was deeper, richer, composed of layers, wood dust, sleep, body heat, and something else, barely perceptible but unsettling, like metal in water. Fear, I thought, but fear didn't come right away. It was lagging. A man was standing by the desk. He didn't appear. He was just there, as if he had always been standing there, and only now had I learned to see him. Tall, thin, in a timeless dark suit. Not old, not modern. His hands were in thin gloves that seemed like an extension of his skin. Between his fingers, he held a small glass vial without a label. He wasn't looking at me. He was listening to the air, eyes closed. A slow inhale. Another, as if he were smelling not a scent, but the absence of a scent, checking what exactly had vanished. "No," he said, almost with disappointment. "It is not the space." He took a step. The scent moved with him, as if it were a part of his shadow. "And not the things," he added. A pause. "It is you." I tried to tense my fingers, then my jaw, then my tongue. My body didn't react, but I felt it completely, every point, every weight. I wasn't absent. I was fixed in place. The man came closer. He stopped so near that I felt the change in temperature against my face. "Strange," he whispered. "Usually people smell after, but you even before." He leaned toward my neck. I felt myself being inhaled. Not air, not skin. All of me. Memories, warmth, the remnants of sleep. Expectation, a trace of days, a pause between thoughts. His lips twitched into a barely perceptible smile. A rare composition. Panic finally arrived, sharp, dull, but muffled, as if someone had turned the volume down. I was screaming inside, but the scream wouldn't reach my mouth. The perfumer took out a thin glass tube. It was transparent, almost invisible, like a medical instrument one isn't warned about. He held it to my chest. There was no touch, but I felt a separation, as if a layer was being slowly peeled from me. Not of flesh, not of soul, but of presence. The thing you leave in a room when you sit in silence for a long time. "People think scent is an ornament," he said quietly. "A trifle that vanishes, but it is proof. He held the tube steady, proof that you were whole. I felt an emptiness, not cold, not pain, but a void, as if there were less depth within me. The scent in the room was weakening. Along with it, I was weakening too. Suddenly, the perfumer tensed. His breathing broke for the first time. "No," he said sharply. He stepped back. "It is not fear." He held the vial up to the light. The liquid inside was unstable, cloudy, as if it didn't want to remain itself. "You were already open," he whispered. "Too long ago." I felt a sharp coldness inside, as if someone were trying to take me, and suddenly realized there was nothing left to take. "You haven't been all here for a long time," he said. "One cannot work with this." The vial cracked. The scent didn't spill. It rushed back into me, sharply, painfully, as if someone were trying to shove smoke into my lungs. I gasped. My chest jerked. The world shrank to a point. "Sorry," said the perfumer, and for the first time, there was no certainty in his voice. "You're unfit for storage." He stepped into the shadow. The most valuable is always nameless. I woke up with a jolt, as if pushed from the depths. Air burned my lungs. I sat in bed, hunched over, clutching my chest, trying to remember how to breathe without permission. The room was ordinary. The silence, ordinary. The light from the street lay on the walls, as always. The scent was gone. But in the morning, I realized something was wrong. My clothes had no scent at all. Not on my body. Not of detergent. Not of the air. I pressed my shirt to my face. Nothing. And when I touched my neck, it seemed to me that I had become a little less noticeable. As if someone had already come, evaluated me, and decided that there was nothing more worth keeping here. I had grown so used to that clock that I stopped noticing it. It had hung on the wall for many years and was always fast, slightly, almost delicately by a minute or two. It didn't bother me. I checked the time on my phone anyway, and the clock remained nothing more than a sound. Constant, steady, soothing. That evening, I worked late. The keys clicked quietly, the screen glowed softly, and the room lived its usual nocturnal life. That is why the silence came so sharply. I didn't realize right away that something was wrong. Only after a few seconds did it hit me. I no longer heard the ticking. I raised my head. The hands were still. They hadn't slowed down gradually. They simply froze, as if someone had torn away time's ability to move. The air in the room became strangely tense. I managed to think that perhaps the battery had finally given up. And then the clock started again. Tick, tick, but the rhythm was foreign. Slow, deep. Every strike didn't just measure a second. It confirmed its existence. I decided to deal with it in the morning. I lay down in bed, but before falling asleep, I felt a strange thing. Every tick resonated somewhere inside my chest. It wasn't painful, just synchronized. I started counting the beats to calm myself. At 23, I fell asleep. I didn't wake up. I returned to a body that had ceased to be mine. At first, it looked like ordinary sleep heaviness, that moment when you don't yet want to move. I wasn't even afraid. I simply tried to wiggle my fingers. Nothing. The intent arose and vanished, as if it couldn't find the muscles it was meant to engage. I tried to tense my shoulders, neck, and back. The body did not respond. It lay correctly, too correctly, like an object placed down that no longer requires correction. I tried to take a deeper breath. The air entered and stopped. My chest did not expand. Breathing was permitted but rationed, as if someone were deciding for me how much life I was allowed at that moment. My eyes opened on their own. The first thing I heard was the clock. It was ticking loudly, obscenely loudly. Tick, tick, tick. There was enough silence between the strikes to realize the fear, but not enough to get used to it. Every sound echoed like a footstep in a large, empty hall where I was the only one being counted. I tried to scream, not even with a voice, with a thought. The thought didn't pass through. It hit a wall inside my head and crumbled. My gaze rose to the wall on its own. The clock had changed. The dial had darkened, as if it had absorbed the shadows of the room. The numbers had become deeper, sharp, as if carved with a knife. But the worst part was something else. Between the hands, an additional circle had appeared, thin, internal, with tiny markings I didn't remember. It was moving, slowly, inexorably, towards zero. You noticed came a quiet voice. The voice was calm, too calm. Beneath the clock stood a man. I didn't see him appear. He was just there, short, gaunt, in an old suit that sat too perfectly, as if it were a uniform. His face was pale, without compassion, without malice. The face of one who is used to being present but never interferes. In his hands, he held a pocket watch on a chain. He wasn't looking at me. He was listening. Not a race. He said almost gently, "Everyone has their own pace." He held the pocket watch to his ear, then to the wall clock. "Do you hear the difference?" he asked. "You always thought it was unimportant." He took a step. Tick, step, tick, step. The synchronization was perfect. It became hard to breathe, not because of fear, but because of the precision. "But time doesn't go," he continued. "It is given away." He came closer. The space between us compressed, as if the room had decided to shrink to make it more comfortable for him. "You gave it away for years," he said, "without a signature, without an account." He leaned over my chest. "Right here. Do you hear it?" I heard it. My heart was beating in time with the clock. I wasn't the one adjusting. I had long since been tuned. Tick, tick. I tried to break the rhythm, to speed up my breathing, to be more afraid. It was in vain. "I'm not taking it," he said quietly. "I am merely recording." He raised the pocket watch. The hand on it moved one more notch. In that moment, I lost something. Not a memory, not a pain, a sense of reserve, as if the knowledge that there is still time had been removed from within me. "Just a little more," he whispered. "You will hardly notice." The air became thick and heavy. The boundaries of the room blurred. I stopped understanding where the body ended. "Don't be afraid," he added. "When it stops, it always looks like a dream." The inner circle on the clock almost touched zero. Tick. I inhaled sharply, as if for the first time in a long while. My body jerked, and I sat up in bed, gasping for air. My heart beat chaotically, out of rhythm, as if trying to make up for what was lost. The room was ordinary. The shadows were moving. The air was light. The clock on the wall ticked familiarly, almost soothingly. I looked at the time. It showed several minutes less than it had before I fell asleep. I took the clock off the wall. I pulled out the battery. It continued to tick. And sometimes at night, I wake up from a feeling that the silence has once again become too precise. As if someone, somewhere nearby, has stopped, is listening, and is once again checking the time against me. The evening held nothing special, precisely why it dragged on. The day had been exhausting, blurred, with no clear boundaries between tasks. I got home late, ate something cold while standing in the kitchen, and sat for a long time in the darkness of the room, staring at my phone. I didn't turn on the light. My eyes hurt anyway, and the screen seemed like the only moving object in the apartment. While I put the phone on the nightstand, the silence became palpable, not empty, thick. I looked around and, for the first time that evening, really looked at the room. In the corner by the wardrobe, I noticed a web. Thin, almost perfect, stretched so neatly as if it hadn't been made in a hurry. I thought I'd clean it in the morning. I didn't want to disturb the corner now, to break something that had already set. I got into bed, tossed and turned, listening to the house slowly falling asleep. Before falling asleep, I looked at that corner again. It seemed the shadow there had become deeper than the rest of the darkness. And I fell asleep. Woke up, or so it seemed. I didn't open my eyes immediately. First came a strange sensation, as if I were lying too correctly. My body wasn't just motionless, it was positioned, arranged exactly as it should be. I tried to move, not with a movement, with an intention. The intention was there. The answer was not. My body had grown heavy, not from fatigue, but from an alien will, as if someone had placed a mold over me, and I fit into it. Breathing was shallow, ragged, every breath as if passing through a thin membrane that wouldn't let it go deeper. My eyes opened on their own, and the first thing I felt was a presence from above. Not a sound, not a shadow, a fact. I slowly shifted my gaze to the ceiling. Above me was a spider, big enough that my brain refused to accept it as a living creature. His body wedged into the corner between the ceiling and the wall, legs bracing against several surfaces at once, as if he weren't just holding on, he was anchoring the space. He wasn't hanging, he was standing on the ceiling as if on the floor. He didn't move, and that was the worst part, because I felt him watching, not with eyes, with his entire mass, his entire presence, as if his attention covered me like a shadow with no edges. I tried to blink. My eyelids twitched and froze. I was allowed to see, and not allowed to hide. One leg shifted slowly. The movement was too controlled, too conscious. The spider wasn't rushing. He knew I wouldn't disappear. Then a second leg shifted. He wasn't coming down. He was bringing the ceiling closer. Every movement seemed to fold the space between us, making it shorter, denser. When he was right above my face, the air turned sticky, viscous. I smelled old dust, dry wood, and something living but ancient, like enclosed places where no one has been for a long time. A thin thread touched my cheek. Cold, almost gentle. "You are not moving," rang out dryly, like legs rubbing against a web. The voice had no source. It appeared instantly inside my head, like a thought you didn't formulate. Therefore, you are already in the web. Another thread settled on my wrist, then on my chest. They didn't pull or cut. They took away possibility. They didn't fix the body, they fixed the choice. "I do not catch those who fight," he continued. "I take those who wait, those who lie still, those who watch." When the legs touched the blanket, the mattress dipped slightly. I felt the weight, not of a point, but of the whole creature at once, as if it began slowly transferring itself onto me. "You lay down," said the spider. "You didn't check. You allowed it." Threads kept settling. Shoulder, side, neck. It didn't wrap around. They fitted in, tailoring the space to my body like a ready-made mold. "Sleep," he said. "The web is already here." Pressure in my chest grew. It felt like I was being squeezed not from the outside, but from the inside, as if the breath no longer belonged to me. "When you don't move," he added, "you become convenient." And then the paralysis released abruptly. I bolted up, sat in bed, gasping. My heart was pounding. The room was empty. Ceiling clean. No spider. Streetlight fell, just the same as always. But in the morning, I noticed thin, barely visible threads stretching from that very corner to the bed. I tried to tear one. It didn't break. It just slowly went into the wall.